Hi, I'm astrologer Penny Dix. Welcome to another Astrobite. Now the energy lasts a few days and it comes from our wonderful planet Mercury, our planet of communication, of the mind, of thinking. Now Mercury has been in Pisces and it's had a long journey around the whole of the zodiac. Yesterday, the 16th, it finally left Pisces and moved into the sign of Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, so thus it begins its journey round the zodiac again. But as soon as it moved in to Aries, it was more or less exactly conjunct our planet Neptune. Now Neptune, of course, rules Pisces, where Mercury has just left. And they've had some meetings in the sign of Pisces when we may have had misleading or confusing thoughts or misleading information coming to us, deceptive communication, anything around that nature could have been happening. But now with Mercury conjunct Neptune in the fiery and pioneering energy of Aries, Neptune's imagination, intuition, and though illusion can still make it a little bit unclear about what to expect. Now, on one level, I think that Mercury conjunct Neptune in Aries can mean maybe we're hoping we're going to get some information or news coming our way that has been hidden, kept away from us, unclear, deceptive even. And even though that message or that news may come, maybe it still doesn't fully give us the insight we've required to a certain situation. So let's have a think more deeply, about Mercury conjunct Neptune. Well, I really feel with this aspect, we're going to be feeling quite visionary. So our thinking is going to be pretty expansive. We will be absolutely almost, full of excitement about the ideas that could flood in through Neptune's energy. But remember, Neptune can also be deceptive. It can be foggy. It can be cloudy feelings that we're not quite seeing the truth or the cold, hard facts of a situation. I think it's interesting that today, when I'm recording this, which is the 17th of April, and this energy will last for a few days, that the James Webb Telescope has picked up signals, and I mean chemical signals have come back to it from a planet outside our solar system that is quite a few hundred light years away from us, orbiting another star similar to our sun, and it gives it's something like 98.8% evidence of life of some description having the right atmosphere or chemicals and gases to be on that planet. So actually, let's make a note of the 17th of April, because this may be the day when the journey into understanding and beginning to find out whether there are probably many other planets that support some kind of life in our solar system is very possible. Now, I think this is quite a good example of the Mercury conjunct Neptune. So we've had this news coming in. This is exciting news. And if we think about the fact that Pluto is coming up, or rather Mars is moving into Leo tomorrow. I'll get it right in a minute. Mars is moving into Leo tomorrow. And so Mars is going to be starting its opposition to Pluto. And this is quite startling, quite transformative. This could really get us excited about information that comes out. Now, when I was listening to the news a bit earlier, they have to be something like 99 point, let's say 5 or 6% certain that the gases that they are registering via the telescope are in the right quantities, the right balance. And don't quote me, I'm not a scientist or an astrophysicist. They have to be in the right kind of nature to be able to give certain evidence of some kind of life on other cosmic bodies. But, you know, I think it's super exciting. Now, what I'm thinking is because it's conjunct Neptune, it's not clear. We're not sure, we don't know. And there you are, you have a perfect example of Mercury conjunct Neptune saying, oh, we've got these ideas, this information coming in, but it's not clear, and we've got to get more evidence. I wonder whether, as time passes over the next few weeks, especially perhaps leading up to the new moon in Taurus, which is actually only, 12 days away, something like that, we may see with the Mars-Pluto opposition on the 27th of April, more definitive information coming out. But that's for another Astrobite. So let's just pull things back a bit, because I'm getting very caught in Neptunian vision here as I get carried away with the visionary thinking that Neptune can provide, especially conjunct Mercury. So we can have very vivid imaginative ideas and thoughts at the moment. We can get sudden bursts of inspiration, original ideas, and ideas that can be, almost Uranus in their nature, where they're inventive, creative, and seem quite ahead of their time. I think another aspect of this conjunction is our communication is going to be, on the whole, more sensitive, more empathic, more intuitive, because of the softness and the gentleness brought in by the gentle side of Neptune's energies, soothing Mercury in Aries that could get a bit carried away and gung-ho about everything. So we might find that when we're discussing situations, decisions, problems with friends today or co-workers, that we're kind of feeling our way through the conversation, really trusting our psychic and gut instincts, picking up the non-verbal communication that goes on between us all the time. At the same time, we may find that our intuition takes over and we come across with statements that are very profound and deep. But we have to remember that Aries is a fast sign. It wants to move, and it wants to move now. It wants to go quick. Let's begin. Let's start. So this is where we have to be a little bit mindful, because our thinking, our ideas can be maybe too idealistic in their nature. And there's a danger of impulsively acting on these ideas rather than taking a step back and thinking these things through. So if you're experiencing anything like that over the coming days, just take a step back and be a little bit more circumspect and get a better sense of what it is, the situation that you're talking about, because we can be overly impulsive and overly persuasive and say, no, I know I'm right. This is the right way to go. But remember, Neptune can be about illusion, so that we're not actually seeing things clearly. So even though we really feel, no, this is what my intuition is saying, it may be that it's just off center a bit. So just be mindful of that. The other thing that can happen with this energy is that our kind of psychological boundaries can be a little bit blurred. We may overstep ourselves with others. There can be miscommunication with others and even self-deception, or what we hear back from another, we colour it with our own colour, which we do anyway, in a sense. But this is Aries is a sign where we act, then think. And really, with Mercury conjunct Neptune, we need to think and think clearly before we act. So we may find we get inner turmoil and a real sense of struggle on an inner level. But this is also about the creative potential. So this kind of aspect is brilliant for artists, writers, musicians, anyone who communicates on that kind of spiritual level, channelers, astrologers, intuitives. So, you know, this Astrobite I'm doing today, I'll probably be waxing lyrical because I'm recording it as Mercury is exactly conjunct Neptune. So the other side is there's a sort of combination of being a mystic messenger, or is one going to be a spiritual warrior? So it has that flavour to it. Which way, which balance do we err on? Do we do it sensitively and empathically, or intensely and with maybe over assertive so that it comes out quite aggressive? So I think we have to be mindful and watch out for being too impulsive, too unrealistic with our thoughts and ideas. Also, don't trust everything you hear today. Look for your evidence, like the scientists are doing with this planet that may support some form of life. Get your evidence and try to think before you speak, because otherwise you will live to regret it later. And also be mindful that you don't misinterpret signals that come from others, or project your fantasies onto the real world, so that, no, I know this is going to happen. This is where we really have to be mindful, and that our intuition may just be a little bit off point. So I think it's quite an interesting conjunction, and we're going to have this energy for a few days, which will be interesting because we're coming up to today. Thursday is the end of the working week, because of course Friday is Good Friday in the Christian calendar, and also in the Jewish calendar it's a holiday, but I can't remember. It's Passover, isn't it? Because both Easter and the Jewish calendar with their religious ceremonies are linked in with the lunar calendar. And Easter is always on the first Sunday after a full moon. And of course, we had the full moon last weekend. So I came up with a phrase for our word for the day. So we actually have a phrase for the day because I thought this would be more useful. And it's idealistic thinking. So there can be a lot of danger in idealistic thinking. It can be hugely creative and can bring in the most wonderful, inventive ideas and make them a concrete reality. But if they are too outside the box, it can lead to disappointment, delusion, even harm. So let's see what quotes I found for this. Okay, so John Galsworthy said, idealism increases in direct proportion to one's distance from the problem. Oops, my fridge just switched on as if to say, yes, that's right, pay attention to that. It's just really funny. So it's similar to what I've just been saying about we have to make sure we don't get disconnected from real life and real life experience. There's a proverb which is, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's another truism one can say. And that's about idealism without having the wisdom or awareness. And of course, it can cause real damage. John McCarthy said, he who refuses to do arithmetic is doomed to talk nonsense. And this points to the danger of idealistic thinking without rational grounding. Now, this is interesting because as I'm reading this, I'm thinking to myself, I was terrible at arithmetic. I was absolutely appalling. I still am. Does this mean I talk nonsense? Answers, she risks, in the chat, please, because I think I see his point, but my mathematics and arithmetic is absolutely shocking. You know, if I go in a shop and pay with cash and they put a handful of change back in my hand, I just sort of think, oh, I don't know, that looks about right. I have no idea. I could be diddled or overpaid back. I have no idea. So, but I've got this far in my life. So I kind of think, well, I've got this far. I think at the moment things are okay. But that could be my idealistic thinking due to Mercury conjunct Neptune. Let's move on swiftly to the next quote. So the next one is unknown, and it's, idealists imagine the world as it should be and ignore the world as it is. So this really conveys the gap we have between our vision of how things should be or could be and the reality. And this I'm so aware of saying kind of, I'm terrified to say it any longer. And this is like, what can I say? It's how do we narrow that gap between vision and reality? And I think that Mercury conjunct Neptune in Aries is where it is quite hard to narrow the gap between vision and reality. But as long as we have that awareness, it doesn't have to trip us up. So J.R.R. Tolkien said, a single dream is more powerful than 1,000 realities, which is very powerful as a quote and very encouraging and optimistic that we can overcome the realities that seem to be stuck and fixed. But I think it's also a warning of dreams that overpower the truth. It's a really difficult one because it goes down a rabbit hole of how much we can really honestly, scientifically based, psychologically based, law of attraction based, bend reality to suit us. I do believe there is an ability that we all have to bend, for instance, the cosmology to empower us to use it in a constructive and positive way. And certainly my astrology teacher, Alison Chester Lambert, taught me that. And I think that's true. That is why the empowerment we gain through understanding our natal chart gives us the freedom to go, okay, so now is not the best time to, say, change my job, but I think there is going to be a wonderful opportunity that comes in. And even though the chart is saying it's not the best time, how can I work with the other aspects in the chart to make it positive? And then you would look around and you would think, oh, okay, look what I've got in the second, 8th house axis. Maybe there is transiting Jupiter saying abundance comes. And that might be, right, well, I'll work with that. Is it making an aspect to where this job offer is coming in? Oh, it's making a sextile. Oh, that could be good. So do you see, you can really work in a very four-dimensional way with your natal chart. So moving on from that, we've got Robert Greene. Now, this is a quote that is apparently paraphrased from something called the 48 Laws of Power, which I'm not familiar with, but it sounds interesting, and I think I will have a look and see if I can find out what that is about. But it says, beware of people who put themselves forward as moral authorities. They often use ideals to mask their hunger for control. Ooh, so this shows how being idealistic, or somebody that comes across very idealistic, can actually be on an unconscious level, hugely manipulative. So that's like a warning. And I would say all of these quotes are very, they really resonate for me with the Mercury conjunct Neptune. Now, Aldous Huxley said, utopias are often only achievable at the cost of freedom. So this can be the shadow consequences of pursuing that kind of perfection that we yearn for. There are consequences to every action and decision we make. What Neptune conjunct Mercury is making us aware of and warning us against is not to get ahead of the game, not to run away with the idea and the dream, but to keep some part of you grounded and earthed in reality. Because if there are realistic steps that you can take to achieve a goal, they will be far more effective than the fantasy ones. So I think on that note, after I'm waxing lyrical for, 23 minutes, I'll say thank you so much for joining me for today's Astrobite. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. And I love reading your chat. If I've not replied lately, it's because I've had a couple of days where life has been a bit all over the place. But I will come back to that. And I also want to wish you all a happy Easter. There is another Astrobite because I'm about to record it, which will be up on Friday the 18th. But I'll do that now and you can listen to that tomorrow. So there we go. On that note, thank you so much for joining me. And I really look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Bye guys. Bye.